One. Hello, good evening, everyone. This is Nikki Notte, your host for the Adini Weekly Live. Today, we are talking about a very important subject. We're talking about women and how the COVID-19 is affecting women and how the crisis are affecting women and men differently. We have a very special person in the studio who will be chatting with us and giving us some policy and some legal advice on how to target the issue. In Adini, we have launched in 2016 a movement which is called She Solidarity. This movement aims to empower women to support each other in every aspect of life, women in Europe, women in the diaspora. We also aim to explore this women empowerment and women's solidarity beyond Europe and take it to the continent, which is Africa. And so today you may have heard on the news and in the newspapers that women are being affected tremendously during this COVID-19 outbreak. And during the lockdowns, women are experiencing violence from husbands and abusers with whom they live with. Also, the economic impact of COVID-19 is also impacting women greatly. So we're going to chat about that as well and how we could support or how we could help women in this situation. So I have Miss Joyce Williams, who will be joining me. She is a multi-award-winning U.S. Supreme Court attorney. She's also owns a business which is called Amor Williams, and they deal with project development and finance, international trade and commerce, immigration law, and corporate law. And this is established in Washington, D.C. Miss Williams has also had experiences in working with the United Nations and in Africa, in Asia. And today we're very excited and delighted to speak with you and to hear your views on the issue and how you would advise us to go forward. So welcome. Hello, Joyce. Welcome to the studio. How's it going?
It's going. Okay, thank you, Nikki, for that kind introduction. I'm really excited to have this conversation about COVID and how it's affecting men and women differently, and looking more towards Africa and how it's affecting African women, and how the diaspora can be part of the solution, both in the adopted home country and then also on the continent of Africa.
Yeah, it's because the news has been quite. We've had a lot of news outlets that are talking about how women are being affected by this, by the outbreak, by the secondary impact on women at home, at their work, women on frontline, women at home, women who work in markets, women who with their businesses. So how do you think women and men are affected differently during this COVID-19 outbreak?
There are different impacts on the different genders, men and women. One of the statistics that shows is that COVID is affecting men more negatively in terms of the health issues than it is women. And they're attributing that to generally women tend to have a much more healthier lifestyle than men. in terms of smoking, drinking, and things like that. And so that is a positive impact for women, and it's not going well for men. But if you move from the health aspect of the impact and go into the social aspect of it in terms of the family life, the way that our society generally has been structured, so women has been predominantly the caretakers. So during this COVID crisis, that role even become more prominent, children being at home and not attending school and not having the opportunity to go to babysitters and other things. So the additional impact of having to spend most of their days, women, most of their days with children at home, um,
Yeah.
affecting their mental health, the
Yeah.
stress level.
Hmm.
In terms of the economics, women tend to work in jobs, for instance, in the health sector as nurses, so they're going to be exposed more. There's also women who own small businesses, trading, and also in the corporate world, you see that women tend to be even more in the secretarial, executive assistance positions, which are in times like this, they are very disposable, and so you see that a lot more women are going to lose their income as jobs goes away and as company makes decisions as to who to let go and who they should keep.
Yeah, that's very, I mean, that's something that is affecting us enormously because I mean, women are on the front lines, corporate world and a bit. So we would say, I mean, figures are saying that 70% more women are being, like 70% figures are saying that these are women being affected in this sense, socially, economically. And you also spoke about women who are caretakers and how they're spending more time with their children and taking care of their family, and how their mental health is being affected by this. How would you how can we support this woman during this time?
I think that one of the things when we look at this whole COVID-19 crisis is that we really need to take a good look at our society and the structures that we have put in place, from the way that we organize in terms of housing, how we build our cities and our communities, how we apportion or how we allocate responsibilities, and the inclusivity of the family units, because when you have opportunities in communities, for instance, that have a bigger backyard, bigger compound, affordable houses that have different rooms and other things like that. So you can separate, be in the same, especially during the confinement, you can still be in the same space, but have a bit of space away from each other. Most people, especially when you look at the lower income levels, most people are multi generations living in the same family compound. You have um, parents and children living in a very small confined space. So we need to really take a look at those structures as to how we provide housing, how we build housing to make it more livable in times of crisis like this. In addition to that, we have to look at our social support system, whether there is a hotline that someone can call when they are having a hard time, difficult time, they can call and seek support. Whether there is a check-in system that maybe, whether it's social workers, whether it's the police department, whichever agency that you want to allocate the responsibility to, that can do drop-ins and check on families during times like this. And then also in terms of the employment, that as employers are making decisions, that they should consider some people having a job. It's very critical to their existence, not only for their income, but it's a sense of identity for a lot
Yeah.
of for what they do. So that being stripped away also can create a lot of chaos and misunderstanding in the home. So companies making decisions needs to take into consideration the impact not only to their bottom line but also to their employee.
Thank you, Joyce. And also wanted to speak a little bit about the domestic violence going on during the outbreak and also during lockdowns. Figures that are giving out that even in Europe, that the domestic violence rate has tripled up 3 times more than the usual. And if we take this to Africa and how domestic violence, people are being abused in their homes because they find themselves locked up with their abuser, and seeing that you're someone of a legal person, how do you think that the government or organizations should manage this?
When you talk about domestic violence, issues concerning the home can be very dicey in the sense that society generally even attaches a level of shame to some of the issues that happens at home. So it tends to, even in under normal circumstances, domestic violence tend to be underreported. And having people going through a lot of stress during this time of COVID-19 and being quarantined together, the stress level goes up, whether it's loss of income, whether it's just frustration because you don't have any outlet, and that can increase the domestic violence. In terms of providing support systems, it becomes very critical that there is an avenue and outlet that we each country should put together so that people can call and feel confident in reaching out when there is domestic violence occurring in their home at this time. But in order to put these resources together, one of those things that is needed is shelters. If you have shelters that someone calls, you can remove the person and put the person there. It becomes an effective policy. If
Yeah.
you don't have resources like that, then if someone calls and report domestic violence, you cannot remove the violent person and you cannot remove the person who is suffering. So
Yeah.
you talk to them and you put them back together. It
Yeah.
might happen again, it might not
Yeah.
happen again. So I think it becomes very critical to look at our infrastructures that we have devoted, hotlines, shelters, counselors, and then one of the critical things is also that when people report domestic violence, that they are taken seriously
Yeah.
and all the necessary actions are taken. This is not the time to make excuses that, oh, it's stressful time and so this is just happening. This is the time that we have to actually collect data and use the data that we are collecting that post COVID and thinking through policies that will be able to use the information that we have collected collectively as the government, as a society, as a civil society organizations to really help better provide resources for domestic violence victims.
Thank you, Joyce. I think it's a great initiative that you bring reporting and getting data to be able to use further. But now that we find ourselves, this is a measure for post COVID.
Yeah.
But now that we find ourselves in a situation in which there's no cure, there is no vaccine, there's nothing yet. How would you propose that we tackle this issue? How do we protect these women?
I think that we have to encourage women to really report when there is domestic violence in their home, that they should report, whether it's reaching out to the police or whatever resources is available in their countries, that this is not the time to be shy or be afraid about what might happen, because again, stresses can lead to a lot of violence, and it is not acceptable whether it is under COVID condition or non-COVID condition. So I think that there should be campaigns really going around right now, encouraging and making the resources that are available known and more publicized to women and to men as well, but more to women because women tend to suffer domestic violence more than men does. To really and encourage them to really do report when they experience the domestic violence.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to go. Also, I wanted to further speak about the economic impact of women who are losing their jobs, and let's talk about women who work in markets, for example, and these markets are being closed down. Women who work in saloons, hairdressers, and so they live on a day-to-day basics. Their income is based on what they make the day that they work. And so I wanted to know how you feel that we could tackle the economic impact on these women.
I think that tackling, and you rightly put the issue that most women working on daily wages, and so if you don't work, there is no wage coming
Mm.
in. And under these circumstances, most resources are coming from the government,
Yeah.
whether it's in the form of economic stimulus or unemployment that people can file. But again, it goes to expose some of the issues or a lot of issues that are in existence, but because we were living in, let's say, good times, so we ignore those things where we don't think about circumstances or
Yeah.
situations, the crises and emergencies like this. And
Yeah.
so most of those women, the solution right now will be for an economic stimulus coming from the government side to support them in order for them to have some form of income during this period of time.
Yeah. An economic stimulus. I mean, this is going on in Europe, in the US, and mostly very developed countries because they have the finances, they have the money to be able to provide for these economic stimulus. But I've not heard on in Africa which countries giving stimulus to these women. I've heard of people giving out food and groceries for people to be able to survive on a daily basis. So I'm not sure if this is the way to go because we don't have the finances or we don't have the sources to be able to give these women, every woman, these stimulus that we talk about. And I know that you are involved in an initiative that is an alternative to the government stimulus, because if we can't count on the government, we have to look for an alternative. So I want you to speak to us a little bit about that initiative and how it works and what it is and how people can actually get their hands on this help that is being given.
So you rightly said that in terms of the European, America, and some of the developed countries, there is the stimulus option. But even in Africa and also developing countries, I know there are some economic stimulus that they can access through the multilateral banks, IMF. And while that is might be going towards more about the healthcare and the fight
Yeah.
against COVID, the individuals who are going to be losing income needs to be supported one way or the other. So this is a challenging and interesting time for African governments in terms of thinking about creative solutions to address the gap that is going to be left in the income because women cannot work, or most people who are day laborers cannot work as a result of COVID. So that is one thing that the government can do in terms of thinking about creative solution, I think that the private sector also can step in terms of providing resources that can support women. And in the private sector, you have the nonprofit sector, you have the churches. A lot of people belong to churches especially when you go to Africa. So the government can partner with churches and look at how they can pull resources together in order to support this women. On my side, personally, I, together with a group of other Ghanaians in the United States, we have created what is called the Ghana Diaspora COVID Response Fund.
Mm-hmm.
And we created that fund looking at the impact COVID is going to have, especially on the group of women that you talk about, the daily wage women. So in raising the fund, our goal is to partner with the private sector in Ghana and offer the funds to them in a form of microloans. We're still working out the details, but no interest loans to really restart and help them to restart their businesses. So for someone who traded, if depending on how much goods they've lost, especially when you trade in perishable goods like food supplies and other things. You've either eaten your food, trying to feed your family, or they have gone bad. So in that situation, we are looking to really provide resources to fill in the gap of what might not be available from the government side.
Okay, I mean that's a great initiative. I mean, no interest loans will be very good for some women to be able to have access to. So that's a great initiative. So how can people actually help if they want to join in on this initiative?
So in the next couple of days, we'll be launching the website for this initiative. We have a PayPal account that is set up. So we would have a social media presence, we'll have our website, and we'll share with you so you can share it with people in your network as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we intend to use the social media channels, word of mouth, and just also newspapers and any other resources that we can to really broadcast this and ask for support from every single person that can donate, can share, and can help us to raise funds for this important initiative.
Okay, so people, you heard it here first. If you want to help, if you want to show solidarity, and give people a chance to be able to go through the day-to-day life without struggling, you can definitely contact Miss Joyce Williams and see how we could help. I also wanted to talk a little bit about how, I mean, besides this initiative that we're putting together, how do you think people from the diaspora can help women in Africa during this hard time,
Um,
economically or
I think that as your organization or your campaign rightly says, she solidarity, right?
yeah.
So this is the time that we all have to come together as one people. So the people in the diaspora, it's still stressful time because this is a global pandemic. So wherever you are feeling some level of stress and also some level of uncomfortability. But
Mhm.
in doing so, we are still looking that this is the time for the diaspora to look at Africa and look in the individual countries, some of the gaps that exist, and try to think about how can we be partners with the women on the ground through donations, through communications. There are so many different women groups that offer support. So I think that those groups needs to reach out to
Mhm.
us sisters who are on the continent and show that support and solidarity, not only in donations, but also in moving forward, that we are all in this together.
Okay. Also, we'll be taking, thank you, Joyce. We'll be taking questions from the public. If anyone has questions, definitely put your questions and I'll receive it and we can discuss it with Joyce. Also, so I have one question. Someone asking if putting these women that are out of jobs, these women that work and gain their income through daily wages can be put in on the front line, since this is where the vacancy is more right now.
Well, when we talk about being put on the front line, we have to be careful about what we're saying. I've seen some women initiative where they are sewing masks, uh, face masks, and then also for the PPE gowns for hospital workers. So those are some of the initiatives that can support women and put them back into work. Women who have experience in the health sector, what is in the health sector that can be trained, that you can train people quickly for them to do with some of those initiatives, to train women to get them back to work. But I wouldn't say that throw people into tents just because we're trying to find them to something to occupy their time.
Okay, and what about because only grocery stores, I mean, during the lockdown, only grocery stores, only supermarkets and farms are working. What about putting these women in the agriculture sector, for example, because we need more and more food, I mean, because we still have to consume. Is that an alternative way to tackle the loss of income during the outbreak?
Well, as you know, in COVID, the requirements or the guidelines that we've been hearing over and over is social distancing. And so not gather people in a whole lot of space, lots of people in one space. So in these farms, we have to look at what kind of jobs are available and how many people we can put in an assembly line, in a processing line, that does not also compromise their health and or compromise their exposure to COVID. So I think that in all sectors, we can look and say that safely we can employ or we can call these women who are out of work to be part of, to retrain and to start doing something new. But I think that we have to be careful so that we are not doing that at the expense of exposing them to the virus.
Okay, thank you. I also have another question. What, and I read, what about violent women? Is the perpetrator always male? What about children under influence attacking parents? What kind of policy can be put in place for them?
So when we talk about violence, you get it from all sections. It could be children against parents, it could be parents against children, husband against wife, wife against husband. And again, the solution is to have the resource available that people can report these things. Because when it's kept quiet, that is when it can continue because there is no consequence to the perpetrator. Whether it's parents, children against parents, I think that parents should be comfortable to report these things to the authorities and to bring in a third party, whether it's social workers, whether it's the police, to really try to de-escalate the situations in their home and bring some sense of peace.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope the question has been answered for the person that asked. Also, I have a question here asking, what about the women's agency experience shows that charity does not offer a sustainable solution. What about microfinancing, coaching, and training?
I think that all those things are very important. And to me, even with this fund that we are trying to raise for women in Ghana, one of the critical components that we've discussed is that it has to come with capacity building in terms of coaching and training to really help along towards a much more long term solution. Because it is easy to give someone $100, but
Yeah,
without any training and without any direction, that $100 can go very, very quickly. And
yeah,
I think that one of the things too that for me personally, I'm looking at in terms of solution is that data collection becomes really, really important. Because if we collect data, we are able to formulate policies that are targeted towards the deficiencies and the gap that we see.
yeah,
So, for instance, if you take the market women, we have to be able to have an incentive for them to register, whether with a registering authority in their home country. So we know that these are the many women who are selling. These out of these women who are selling or buying. These are the ones in the produce sector. These are the ones in the garments industry. These are the ones that are in toys, whatever that they sell. At the same time, you see people who sell on the streets, and
yeah,
usually they have something very small on top of their head, and they're selling. All those people, we need to find a way to have them be registered and counted,
yeah,
and policies needs to be formulated to include all those collective. Because when you're building hospitals, when you're looking at cost of health, all these people living in your economy are consumers of health, consumers of electricity, social infrastructures like library and playground, roads, all those kind of things. So if you don't know the resources and the people living in your economy in on that grassroots level, then
yeah,
you make policies, you formulate policies that are very deceptive. And when things like this happens, then you're going to be found out because you realize that, oh, your hospitals are not up to capacity.
yeah.
And this is not only in developing countries, we are seeing it all around the world, where the hospitals and emergency rooms are not equipped to carry or to see a whole influx of patients coming in at one time. Because if it's something that happened, for instance, when Ebola happened, it was mostly on the continent of Africa that can easily be contained. But when it's a global pandemic where everybody is looking inward, you don't get support from any country, or any country who is coming to support you is looking inward first before they give you the support. So it becomes very difficult if you don't have a long-term emergency sustainable plan.
Thank you. I'll need you to come more in the frame because we're losing you in the frame. So if you could come a
Oh, okay.
little bit forward, yes, awesome.
Okay.
So we can see you. I have another question from Kali, asking how do we collect data in African countries, since we know that their information systems are not well structured.
I think, Kylie, we know that problem, and we also know that there are technology and systems in place that really makes data collection easily. There has to be the political willness for for the government to undertake those kind of projects. I
Yeah,
mean, I remember in countries like Ghana, for the last time I was there, they have the mobile passport, or the check the entry system where you can scan your passport without having someone do the checking and all those. So the modern technologies are available that makes it easy for us to collect data and all of those things. We have to decide that it is valuable to our economy and it's add value in providing services to our citizens, and then go ahead and then invest in those structures to build the data collection systems that we need.
Okay, thank you. So we're calling on all people, developers, app developers, everything, those people that are in the diaspora that can actually support and contribute to make this a reality, to make it a point to be able to go down there and do these kind of things. We are talking about this in the diaspora. We have so many ideas. We have so many ways that we could help, but we're kind of here still and giving our opinions, but not actually going down on, I mean, the field of where the things are happening and pitching our ideas and the things that we think could develop could develop our continent. My next question is how do you think we can get the government involved? Because clearly we have so many ideas on how to develop our country and how to help in situations like these. So how do we get the government to listen to us?
I think that last year we saw something with the Year of Return campaign that was, I think, successful partnership or successful attempt to really include the diaspora. While it was more about come and see, and it was touristy and some engagements in different level, I think that the governments in each country sees their diaspora. You see the diaspora present in remittances. You see the diaspora present in putting up whether it's homes or supporting other businesses there. So the relationship has to be one of a partnership whereby most countries do have a diaspora office, and I think that the diaspora office should be an office that is open to all. You don't have to know anybody. You don't have to be from even that country. If I think that I have a solution that will help South Africa, I think that being African, I should be able to reach out to if it's their diaspora office to be able to engage and say, this is what I can offer, and then have a conversation around that. So I think that if the diaspora is going to be able to participate in the development and problem solutions on the continent of Africa, that it has to be a partnership whereby the African countries are open to receive and welcome the diaspora, and the diaspora will also have to understand the countries that they want to work in by really learning more about their culture and understanding of how the system works. And so when you approach each other at a place of mutual respect, I think you can get things done.
Okay, thank you. We're taking more questions. So we have another question. The question, are the African feminists, let me put it on the screen, are the African feminists loud enough to bring the global map, the specific concerns of African women? So I suppose, are the feminists, African feminists, loud enough to bring the concerns of African women on the global map?
I think that yes, the African feminists are loud enough. And I always say there is always room for improvements. I mean, in the last couple of years, I've seen different women organizations doing different things. I'm on the board of the International Association of Women Lawyers and Judges, African Women Lawyers and Judges. I've seen the UN Initiative on African Women Leadership Network. I've seen the initiative on She Leads, and so many different organizations and campaigns to really help African women to have conversations about how African women can be empowered and have full participation in their governance, in their society. But I think that one of the things that we forget is that it shouldn't only be the women at the top. When I talk about the women at the top, it shouldn't be only women in the formal sector. We should really do very well and encourage the participation of women in the informal sector, because you cannot decide and plan and advocate for someone that you don't understand what their issues are. As a lawyer, I cannot properly represent my clients if I don't understand what their issues are and what the solutions are. So I think that we have to encourage more partnership between these entities and most of the women on the grassroots level to really hear and understand what the problems are in order to really think together as partners to find solution. In that way, we do very well in advocating for the real issues and not the issues that we think these
Yeah,
women are facing.
facing. Yeah, that we go on grassroots basis, go to the source and get their challenges and get their struggles to be able to work, find solutions for them. We also have another question. Are women in Africa well prepared with the crisis, considering the practicalities of hand sanitizers, virtual work arrangement, and food distribution plans? Since there have been outlets that is saying that Africa, in general, is not ready and prepared for COVID-19.
I don't think anybody was prepared for COVID-19. We've seen the data all around the world. So I don't think that it's specifically an African problem. I don't think that we've seen some countries that got ahead of it and have made progress, and they've been applauded, like Taiwan, um, for instance. But I think that in terms of preparedness, nobody really had any strong preparedness plan. But when we shifted to the African women, again, this is a time for us to reflect on how we have organized our societies, because the way that we live, the way that we sell, even in the markets, it's an open space. Everybody comes, you buy, you go. There is not a whole lot of hand washing, sanitization, because you just come, you do your groceries, you buy your produce, whatever you need, and then you leave. So I think that going forward, in terms of even the layout of the markets that these women sell in, we have to think about how can we make it efficient and safe when you have something like COVID happen. Um, and I think that in the grand scheme of this, as this unfold, we've seen the resilience of women all around the world, and really human beings around the world, in terms of finding creative ways to make hand sanitizers when there was shortages. We've seen some people
Yeah.
using alcohol to create something
Yeah.
to as hand sanitizers. We've seen these women sewing the face masks when you can get the masks on the at the marketplace. So I think that while we see the unpreparedness that we all were not, that we are all guilty of, we also see the resilience of the human
Yeah.
spirit and how we have adapted and continue to adapt to try to fight through COVID-19.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we will see and take questions. There are no more questions. If anyone has any questions, they should definitely drop them, and we will take them up with Miss Williams. And for now, I would ask, what are your last words in this situation for women out there? How people are struggling during COVID-19, frontline workers, backline workers, people in the corporate world, and women on the continent. What advice and what are your last words for them?
So I would say I'm from Ghana. In Ghana, we say something like "atiye ma refre," which really translates to means that when everything is going well, we tend to forget. But I
Yeah.
really want this crisis not to be one that will be quickly forgotten when things are back to whatever the new normal will look like when we finally get over COVID-19. I think that from individual standpoint, this is the time for us to really reflect and see how we have organized our lives to better prepare for emergencies and make room for uncertainties.
Mhm.
On in terms of corporate level, I think that it is very hard for all businesses. It's a challenging time, but I was listening, I was on a webinar, and I think that one of the speakers said something that really touched me, that this is not the time for you to discard your employees, but this is the time to really do your best to accommodate and support your employees, because when this is over, they will appreciate it and they will help you rebuild the company back up. So, as hard as it is for CEOs to make decisions, we are also appealing to them that their decision making not only go into how much of our bottom line can we keep, but also how can we support our employees in this hard time. When it comes to civil society organizations, looking at we have to civil society organizations will also need to look at their programming, that does their programming include things that really help society in terms of emergencies and difficult situations such as COVID, and even some of their training programs, does it only goes towards charity or it goes towards empowerment. And then, last but not least, to governments, I think that each government really needs to do a self-internal reflection. This cannot continue. It cannot be business as usual when things open back up to normal. This is a time that you know we've been given a second chance of a sort. And so each government will have to look at how they can look at policies that really address the deficiencies and the gaps in their economies and then support their citizens, because that becomes the key point. At the end of the day, when all this is over, we still need each other. You need people to go back to work. You need people to start consuming. You need people to start moving in order to really get the economy up. Without people, you don't have an economy. So I'm hoping that we will not forget too quickly, and we will remember the families that had lost family members, healthcare workers that are working continuously day and night, the pain that they are going through, both in physical tiredness and emotional as they are separated from their family. That all of those things will be a memory, just as we remember the world wars that happened, the Holocaust, that we really remember this time and also adjust our actions, our decision making, our policies to make sure that whenever the next crisis hits, it will not hit us the way that we are suffering today.
Thank you so much, Joyce. I see that there's a last question. People are really, they want to hear you speak. I have a comment saying Joyce is speaking a lot of sense. We agree. We both agree on that. And we'll take the last question before we leave. So the question goes, the status of women at the grassroots level is often addressed in items of struggles, problems, challenges, perseverance, tech. However, reality also reveals the contrary, the creativity, adaptability, innovation. How can this aspect be nurtured and encouraged?
I think that the person who asked the question hits the nail right on the head. I mean, when you go into the African villages, it's amazing what these women can do with so little. I mean, even in the household, the management, those people who have been raised by a single mother, the resources and other things. So I absolutely agree that women at the grassroots level has so much potential. And while we can address that, is really trying to also bring them up in a platform. We say, oh, this is the non-formal sector, and we tend to stigmatize and think that non-formal sector means that you are uneducated, you have no ideas, you have no thoughts, or you have no management of yourself. But a lot of these women have better management skills than some of us in the so-called formal sector. And I think that, as I was talking about civil societies, women campaigns, that we have to appreciate those talents and highlight those in conversations, not only talk about challenges. So I think that how we address that is to make conscious efforts to really highlight those assets that the women also bring to the table, and not only look at the difficulties or the challenges that we tend to focus on in conversations.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Joyce, for joining us in the studio on Adni Weekly Live today. It has been an absolute enlightening moment to speak to you on this topic. I am very, very much, this is like my very interesting topic. I really love talking about women. So having to have this conversation with you was very enlightening and very knowledgeable and informative. And I believe that everyone in the audience thought the same. It has been a delight having you, and hope to have you soon talking about other subjects as well. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. And the same, I love talking about women because I think that we are incredible creations of God, and we have so
Yeah,
much to offer. And the world, watch out, we are here.
we're here. Watch out, we're here. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in on Adni Weekly Live this week. It has been an absolute blast hosting this. And we'll be back on Saturday with another topic, another intriguing topic on Adni Weekly Live. So stay tuned and stay with us, and see you on Saturday.